Hey, Cash, thanks for taking the time. I don't think we've spoken to you since you guys added Paul Goldschmidt. I kind of just ask you about how that worked out and where you guys see where you see your roster right now offensively, particularly when it comes to looking for or just from the right side.
Well, we obviously talked publicly about a number of times this winter about not having enough choices for our manager to play with to help us balance out. So as we continue to evaluate the marketplace, both free agency and trade, and Goldie was still in play and had interest in returning as well, or at least considering returning. I stayed in touch with Casey Close as representative, and we all know that Paul Goldschmidt is extremely good at hitting left-handed pitching. And so, the opportunity still being there was one we felt was worthwhile of trying to continue the relationship. He's a choice for Aaron Boone against left-handers coming off the bench, or obviously matching up with certain starting pitchers. And so I feel like we've given Aaron Boone and our team a better chance to navigate opposing bullpens or opposing starting pitching probables with his addition.
And just how do you see the outfield shaking out right now? I mean, you have three spots locked in. Jaason is still here, and there's no reason he's not. But I mean, just where do you see his role right now?
Remains to be seen. We have to play the spring out and see where it takes us. He'll get his reps along with everybody else, and clearly we'll have to make some decisions at the end of camp. Sometimes those decisions get made for us when injuries occur, but I guess we'll wait and see how the spring plays out and do what's best for us. When the time is to set the roster.
Thank you.
Go to Greg Joyce.
Hey Brian, just on Dominguez, you said over the winter that when he wasn't playing late last year, you didn't think it was right to send him down to AAA. Does that equation change this year with a different team, different point in the season?
Well, I guess stay tuned. We'll see how it all plays out. There was a definitive role. Ultimately, Grish came out of nowhere last year and really, as we all know, had an all-star caliber season and, took control of one of those everyday spots with Judge and Belly, and which kind of reduced Jaason to, a role player, even though he's a young player. And so we had internal decisions to make in season last year on that. There was still lanes for him to contribute with us, coming off the bench, pinch run, et cetera. And we're in the midst of a pennant race to try to determine, obviously American League Eastern Division title or obviously a wild card situation. And so there's definitely ways because Dominguez is an extremely talented player, obviously both offensively and, he's one of our best runners. So, having him as a choice for a manager to use coming off the bench at times as pinch runner and stealing bag or first or third, second to home, what have you, definitely improves our chances of success because of his pure athleticism. So, we'll be faced with if everything stays the same, we'll be forced to determine what's our best course of action to help this team be impactful. I would concede it's in his best interest to be getting everyday reps. And down here in this controlled atmosphere, we'll be able to do that with all of these guys as you're, getting them out of the gate slowly and getting their buildups properly done. So we'll just have to wait and see how the spring shakes out, who's standing, and then we'll make the appropriate decisions, when we have our, meetings closer to the end of the camp. So we'll see where it takes us. Obviously, there's flexibility in the roster with a lot of players that we can do a lot of different things with, whether they're going north with us or going to AAA. We'll have to wait and see.
Go next to Gary Phillips.
Hey, Brian, thanks for taking the time. You guys have generally speaking avoided big money contracts for free agent relievers in recent years, certainly this past offseason. I'm just curious, why is that the organization's approach to the bullpen?
I don't know if it's an approach by us. There is a number of different. We had conversations with a lot of different players, and then I think it also speaks to depending on what our area need is on the roster. So 2 years ago, we were waiting a long time for the Soto situation that held up a lot of money, and I'm sure some relievers came off the board. This winter, we were dealing with the Bellinger situation, and that took a while. And again, it's not like you have an infinite amount of money to deploy. So if you feel like you have a percentage chance of some of these targets that you want, and some of the other negotiations are higher than maybe you're comfortable doing, I think that's, there's not a organizational policy, I guess, to answer your question about don't pay relievers a certain amount of money. We've had our fair share over the course of my years here that we've paid a lot of money to, and whether it's in the closer role or setup role or what have you, and just how it shook out this winter. But it's not any policy per se.
Gotcha. And then just to follow up on that, how do you feel about the collection of arms that you have in camp so far? I'm thinking more beyond the top of your bullpen depth chart, Bednar, Duvall, Cruz, those guys.
Yeah, I mean, so you're talking about the bullpen specifically, or everything, everybody talking arms, rotation, and bullpen?
The bullpen specifically.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, essentially, we're going to find out about a lot of talented players. We do think we have a lot of talented players. You had mentioned already, you take out Bednar, Duvall, Cruz, and Hill, which are kind of mainstays, so that leaves a lot of competition, which is always a healthy thing too. Whether it's Hedrick, Bird, Chiavelli, Blackburn, Yarborough, and obviously in terms of Blackburn and Yarbs, you're not sure if they're going to be in the rotation in the outset, or if not, they'll collapse into the pen. We got a lot of young kids pushing up from below that, whether they're starters like Elmer Rodriguez or Lagrange, and then, we just had Montero's non-roster invite added and others. I think there's a lot of quality, talented arms with various levels of experience, some raw. I didn't even mention Winquest, who we obviously Rule 5'd. Cade looks really good. We're excited to see where that takes us and him. With the Rule 5 stuff, it's always tricky. You never know, how those launches go, but he's a hard worker with a lot of talent. So it's going to be a fun thing to watch play out. Whether it works or not remains to be seen. But I think we have a lot of quality, interesting choices. But again, we'll have to wait and see how it plays out.
Just to follow up on one more time, with Rodriguez and Lagrange, would you be comfortable with them in a relief role, or would you prefer for them to stay on track as starters?
Yeah, I think it depends on a lot of different things. It depends on how the competition's playing out. It depends on, it's easy to always say you want to keep guys to stay in the starting rotation and stay on their turn and be their depth and continue their journey and build their innings as their development. But at the same time, you got to rob Peter to pay Paul at times and do that balancing act where you got to service the major league club. And it depends on how big a void, how big of a separation, how, in terms of the competition, and all those things will shake out in meetings, whether we make those decisions based on, 8 innings of major league spring training results or 10 innings, that's hard to, place bets on. But ultimately, we're going to see a lot of different things. You're going to hear a lot of buzz about a lot of the big arms and a lot of buzz about the talent, as you do every spring and every camp. And we got to try to make sure we weed out the noise and try to make informed decisions on what's best for our team as we get out of the gate in April, and what's best for the individual player profiles, especially the young ones coming through. But a lot of major league starters, historically breaking out of the pen too when they get their feet wet. So it's hard to predict where it's going to take us, but ultimately the goal is to try to add as many quality arms, and then the game will separate, the ones that have earned the right and the ones that obviously fell short, and we'll try to continue to compete to get back into that spot, down the line. So a lot of time between now and then, but I do think we have a lot of quality competitors that are in camp that we'll get to know some of them more than we do now, better with our major league staff, because we've imported a lot of people outside the organization, and some of the people that are coming from within the organization, the major league coaches are going to get exposed to a little bit more now here in big league camp too. So, and a lot of these guys will rely on a lot of mentorship from, whether it's Garrett Cole or Carlos Rodon, and, there's a lot of leadership here in Max Fried that can really pour into these guys, which is going to be a benefit for us as well. It always is.
Thank you, Brian.
Kirshner, please unmute.
Hey, Brian, after the Goldschmidt signing, do you feel like you have enough right-handed balance now, or are you still in the market for potentially a right-handed outfield bat?
I'm always open to, I'm not closing any doors on right-handed bats, or I'm not closing any doors to just improvability in any aspect of the organization. So, it's never pencils down until the trade deadline ends.
Ron Blum, you're next. Go ahead.
Didn't unmute. There. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Brian. With the way the offseason planned out and bringing back 24 of the 26, does that mean you guys concluded more that falling short last fall was just the group not executing at the key time rather than concluding there were deficiencies that you needed to address?
I mean, from a macro standpoint, I think we assessed last year's team as a really good team. I think it played very well. It ultimately fell short, in the series in Toronto against Toronto in the ALCS. In a micro standpoint, when you're looking at individual decisions that add up to in theory running it back, which is the term we're hearing so much of, and understandably so. I think it's more you engage the current marketplace, and it's an acknowledgement. I think we had really good players that were great competitors, and B, when I started trying to match up in the marketplace via trade or free agent signs, we wound up, comfortable, with every individual choice of, whether it's retaining, bringing back, reacquiring. Goldie was the most recent example. You start measuring that versus the alternatives and weighing that, and you try to make those informed decisions. And that's how it's played out. We're a little different, obviously, in some categories with we're getting some guys back from the IL, like in Cole's case, or a new addition in Weathers, and we hopefully you can be an impactful choice for us, and some of the new kids pushing up, and having Stanton being healthy, starting to spring out where it wasn't the case last year, which allowed Rice to have his coming out party. So I think there'll be maybe some little twists and turns of differences, but ultimately, I just think it's a reflection of, when we went into the marketplace with the amount of money we could play with, this was what we were comfortable doing, and certainly not apologetic of the team we had last year. It was a really strong team. A lot of people, experts in the game, expected, and they're not expected, but predicted could win a world championship. And we're certainly hope to push that into play again, where people, can look at this roster and this team and with how it is performing when it gets deployed, at the end of March and in season and beyond, that people actually say, you know what, it's a legitimate team that, opponents don't like to play, and yes, you can dream on this team, if it plays to the best of its abilities, could take a shot at the title, and that's ultimately what we do. But the title right now is got to be taken in the American League away from Toronto, while defending everybody here in the American League East, which is extremely difficult. And so we got a lot of talented teams we got to go up against. But hey, we like these players, and we're proud of how they competed last year. We're disappointed that we fell short, but we're looking forward to taking another shot at that and seeing where it takes us.
Thank you.
Brian Hope, go ahead.
Hey, Cash. I wanted to ask you about LeGrand and Rodriguez Cruz. What stands out to you about those two specifically when you've seen them, and what are people in the organization saying?
I mean, they're obviously got really high ceilings, very talented players. They've navigated themselves through obviously, the player development system and the leagues they've been performing in now. And I'm on my side of the fence, certainly get a lot of calls on them, understandably so, and a lot of interest in retaining them from our perspective at the same time. And so look forward to seeing how their camp goes this year. I think again it'll give you guys a lot to write about because you'll see the talent, and again it's just another step uh, in their development. Getting a chance to lock her up against and learn from some of these vets and face some of the hitters that you see that they get the chance to see on TV fighting it out in many cases in the World Series and the playoffs, or these are they'll be facing perennial all stars, which would be pretty cool, and I'm sure the nerves will be there and all that stuff. But it's all part of the growing pains per se, and every day that they lock her up here and suit up here is a learning growth day for them and therefore for us, and so excited about where that journey takes them, and because again you turn the clock back, and you can point this every year. So last year at this time, I could be saying the same dialogue about Ben Rice or Cam Schlittler, right? And no one knows what a year difference is going to make and where people's journeys takes them. Sometimes it takes them to injuries. Sometimes it takes them to underperformance and frustration. And sometimes it takes them to their coming out party where they establish themselves as a pretty exciting expectation of a consistent performing player in the major league level at the highest level in the game of baseball in the world. And so, looking forward to how their stories play out.
Thank you. Jorge Castillo, please unmute.
Hey, Brian, you touched on Dominguez earlier. Where does Spencer Jones fall on your sort of depth chart organizationally here? Guy's about to be, enter his age 25 season. What's left for him to do? Obviously, the strikeouts have been an issue, but where do you see him?
Obviously, someone who really conquered a lot of things last year and pushed himself on the map. Probably would be taking an everyday spot, trying to establish himself at the big league level, maybe in some other spot at some other organizations. He's currently blocked with us. Depth chart in theory to have him behind Dominguez going in because Dominguez has had more experience, than he does, but that's not going to stop him in competition. And so again, someone fighting for his opportunity and fighting for time and trying to establish himself. And so currently on the outside looking in with the way the roster currently is set up. But we have 3 outfield spots and a DH spot that, injuries come at times and we'll be looking to fill a void. You certainly hope that's not in the near term. But whenever that's the case, Aaron Boone is going to be addressing our full team, and part of his conversation on a year in and year out basis is if there's 70 guys here in camp, do not think you can't play a major role in this club, whether it's now or down the line, because we're going to need every single one of you if we're going to get to where we want to go. And that's one of the more powerful comments that he makes in those conversations, and so that would apply to him as it applies to anybody else too, which is he just needs to take care of things on his end, and then obviously there's things that are out of his control but if he's doing everything he needs to do, then when there is decisions for us to make on our end, he's certainly wants to be that name to be called. So just continue to obviously be the best version of himself that he can possibly be. He really closed down a lot of things in his development that he needed to address last year. He's continued that into this winter, and looking forward to him having a good camp.
And just one more, do you view him as a center fielder at the major league level?
I think he can play center field. He can play left field. I think he's a very he can play right field. He's a very athletic, talented player. So,
thank you.
Take the last 2 in queue. Rashid McDonald, go ahead.
Hey,
You're live,
you
Rashid.
can.
We're good.
Okay. I'm sorry. It's just that the thing just goes away every time I press unmute. Okay. Hey Brian, how you doing?
how are
You
you?
touched up on the running it back kind of term, and this is a team that has had a lot of success. And you've found ways creatively to put the team in, when building it in positions to be successful and win. How do you create that balance with winning now and sustaining the future?
I mean, I'd say we lean more to trying to win now because we're always, there's no rebuild here. There was that one year that in season we pulled the plug on a team that was letting us down for far too long, and obviously everybody knows that year we might have traded a ton of guys, and it was weird. I think that the rest of the way we played better after we had the departures, which was odd. But anyway, ultimately we're always trying to be locked and loaded and recompete. I don't know if that's even a word, but to get back at it, and that's part of the Steinbrenner legacy. Is they're always trying to make sure that we have a chance to take a shot at the title, and even the odds-on favorites coming out of like Vegas, those guys are experts. They don't like to lose money. They're usually having us at a pretty strong odds of being one of the teams by how they assess our team and our roster on a year in and year out basis. But we certainly don't go off of that. But it's just a talking point, that we obviously can rely on as something that's a factor, a data point. But ultimately, how do we just try to recreate the best of our abilities with the choices in front of us, and get a collection of really talented players. And I know you need it on offense, you need it on defense, you need the pitching in the bullpen and the rotation, and just do the best you can to collect it all, and then hope to God that they play healthy and play up to their abilities and play together, because it's a really, really long season. So no matter what we talk about today, I'm sure the roster will look different because of performance and or injuries in May, and then July, and then obviously September, et cetera. And it's always, we're doing everything we can to plug the gaps, improve on the margins, because ultimately the first goal is to punch through to make sure you get your team into the postseason, and then find a way to navigate the postseason. And unfortunately, we haven't navigated. 24 we got to the World Series, 25 we got knocked out after we got past the first round. We got knocked out by the defending American League champion Blue Jays, and so we just look forward to trying to prove ourselves once again.
And I have one more question. This is the first time that Aaron Judge won't be with the team for an extended period of time in spring training because he's going to the World Classic. Is there a benefit to him getting that engine started early? I mean, he's won the MVP the last 2 seasons, but is there anything different that he's doing this season to prepare?
I don't think so. I mean, ultimately, the great thing about a lot of our guys who live in the Tampa area, Aaron Judge does as well. So he gets it going early every year, and they're always strongly encouraging his teammates to join him and recruit him to get down here early. So whether it was the WBC year, which happens every 3 years, or not, that engine is always revving. I can't tell you how many times him and I talk throughout the winter, about how can we find ways to be better, what players can we acquire, conversations that need to be had, internally, and then what we can do if there's anything opportunity-wise externally. He cares a great deal, like all our guys do, about, being a part of something to be proud of. And so at the end of the day, the ultimate goal that he has and we all have is to try to make our fans proud, because they deserve that.
Take a final question from Junko. Junko, go ahead.
Hi, Cash.
Hello. I got you.
Yeah, Jaason, thank you so much. Kind of like annual questions. Hideki Matsui will still be in a special advisor mission for you?
Absolutely. We're lucky to have him.
And any changes his role?
No changes.
And is he expected to show up in a spring training?
Aaron Boone is the one that talks to our players, so those instructors. So I don't have an update on Hideki or any of them. So for instance, today I saw Ron Guidry shook my hand, so I knew again that Aaron Boone was reaching out to guys like Gator and Hideki Matsui, et cetera. But I don't know when their timeframes are coming in. So, I run into them when they're here. So I look forward to seeing him when he shows up. And so